treating other people with respect and kindness and living the golden rule. These are things that build close relationships. So aside from all of the success that you have in business and with money and growing things, by the time you get to the end of life, the things that are most precious, besides having some pride that you've been able to do some things, maybe to leave the world a little bit better because of your efforts, are the close relationships that you have with friends and family, because you've worked to bring the best out with them, or the best out of them. And you've treated them so well that they just love you. They just say, wow, this is a person I want to be around.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Dave Shallenberger, who is going to share his wisdom on having a vision and managing your time so you can accomplish it. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from the book that we're going to discuss, Do What Matters Most, written by our guest. I am your constant companion. I am your greatest helper or your heaviest burden. I will push you onward or drag you down to failure. I am completely at your command. Half the things you do, you might just as well turn over to me, and I will do them quickly and correctly. I'm easily managed, but you must be firm with me. Show me exactly how you want something done, and after a few lessons, I will do it automatically. I am the servant of all great people, and alas, of all failures as well. Those who are great, I have made great. Those who are failures, I have made failures. I am not a machine, though I work with the precision of a machine, plus the intelligence of a person. You may run me for profit or run me for ruin. It makes no difference to me. Take me, train me, be firm with me, and I will place the world at your feet. Be easy with me, and I will destroy you. Who am I? I am habit. Your habits drive your life, and we're going to chat about that today. But before we do, let's get back to last week's action step, which was to get pen and paper and write down what came to your mind after listening to that episode. Did you make that a habit? Do you take action on these items? The second part of that action step last week, was there something you used to do, maybe when you were a little kid, that made you happy? Did you go do it? Look, life is short. Have fun. Enjoy life. That's what this is all about. Too often I hear sad stories. There was one about a kid who went and asked his dad, "Hey, Dad, how much do you make an hour?" The dad got a little annoyed and he was like, "Well, I make $50 an hour." The kid then said, "Well, can I borrow $20? Now the dad's getting a little bit furious, right? We know how this is. Dad gives him $20 and the kid goes away. Comes back a little while later, puts $25 on the table next to his dad, and he says, "Dad, can I buy half an hour of your time?" Do your kids need to buy your time? Do you make time for your family? It's our most precious asset. You've really got to be clear on what you want and then figure out how to get there. That's what today is all about. Steve Shallenberger is the founder and CEO of Becoming Your Best Global Leadership. He's devoted to helping individuals and organizations achieve their maximum potential. Steve has successfully led companies in 4 different industries and has a keen understanding of how to thrive in business. His new book is written with his son, Rob. It's called Do What Matters Most. Lead with a vision, manage with a plan, prioritize your time. Let's meet Steve and learn about his wisdom. Welcome to Richer Souls, Steve Shallenberger. It's great to have you join us today.
Oh, Rocky, it is such a delight and privilege to be on your show. And I want to take a moment and just congratulate you for what you're doing. The inspirational subject, it's so needed. And so what you're providing to your listeners is amazing. So great going.
Thank you. And I'm excited to bring you to them today because I know you've got a lot of great stuff to share from your book. And so let's dig in. We like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, great question, Rocky. And I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. There were 8 of us in a 900 square foot home. And my parents were divorced when I was 14. And I had one of the biggest blessings ever. My grandpa, when I was like 15 and a half, introduced me to a fellow that became one of about 6 mentors in my life. And he was the first one, Dave Conger. He was a successful real estate broker in the San Francisco Bay Area, had offices in 5 different cities. And so he hired me to put up signs for sale signs, rent, and also to do maintenance. So clean houses out when people were either evicted or there was a change in tenants. And so Mr. Conger helped me start. He was a former bomber pilot in World War II, very organized. And he helped me start my first company at 16. And he gave me a number of books that I should read. And one of those books happened to be The Richest Man in Babylon. And oh my goodness, what a classic. And it just turned out that I was hungry to learn. And one day in the middle of this book, he called and said, "Can you come do some errands for me? And I have a few things to do at my house." And I said, I'd be happy to. And I'd never been to his home. And so I drove there, kind of went over this little hill, and there was this house overlooking the bay. And there were 2 brand new Cadillacs in the driveway, Rocky. And the license plates were personalized license plates, and they said Conger 1 and Conger 2. And I thought, holy smokes, man, I've never seen anything like that. And I thought, if people live like this, I'd like to figure out how to do it. So Dave was a great mentor, really, throughout my life. I did read that book, which had just the really solid principles of money management, what to do to earn it and how to save it and how to invest. So it was great for me.
You were lucky, right? That you met the right person. And it's funny, though, you say 8 of you in 900 square feet. Today, people would freak out over that.
Yes, they would. I'm sure it was a blessing. We didn't know what that meant, but we did great. That's how it goes.
And I think that's what people forget is, when you're in a tight space like that, you become a tight-knit family. And you just have to, right? You have to learn to get along. You have to learn to live in a certain way. And nobody's hiding out in their own little space, staring at an iPhone, trying to...
That's for sure. Well, our siblings are all very close today, and I'm sure it has something to do with that.
And it sure seems like you know how to get things done, and you've been highly successful with that. So let's talk about what inspired you to write the book. Do what matters most, lead with vision, manage with a plan, prioritize your time.
Well, Rocky, when I was, when I left home, I lived in South America for a couple of years when I was 19 and did a humanitarian service mission and came back to Brigham Young University and was working on my accounting degree. And I had some friends say, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Well, I was going to go do an internship." And they said, "Well, how would you like to sell Bibles down in the South, door to door?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in." And man, did I learn that was a tough job, but I was able to do it and earn enough money to pay for my expenses the next year. And that next year, I formed a marketing company and contracted with another company that had character building books for children in the general Intermountain area. And that was my first company. And the next year I had the chance to buy a publishing and printing firm. And within a couple of years had 700 employees. And we were off to the races. And many of these sales reps would come and ask, how can I be a top sales rep? How can I be a top manager? And, I thought of a couple of things to share, but I knew there was a lot that I didn't know. And so I began research at that time. And the research was what sets apart high-performing individuals from everybody else and high-performing teams from everybody else. And I interviewed over the years 150 CEOs and also studied the lives of hundreds of historical figures that have changed the world for good. And what we discovered, Rocky, was that although none of these leaders were perfect, we saw over and over 12 things that they did that created the excellence. And that's what we put in our first book, Becoming Your Best, the 12 Principles of Highly Successful Leaders. And one of my college professors was Stephen Covey. And at that time, as a young man, because I had this new company, I asked him if he might serve as on our board of directors, which he did, and he served for 17 years. And then I served on his board and took over some of his international groups. So we've always had this inspiration of leadership. And about 10 years ago, but after forming and buying companies throughout my career, we started with my oldest son, who had been an F-16 pilot and an Air Force officer, a leadership firm, Becoming Your Best. And we taught the contents, these principles from Becoming Your Best throughout the world. And we found that particularly 3 of them, Rocky, had to do with high performance. And those 3 are things that you do. I mean, we were talking before the show, and I was looking at your bookshelf, listening to you. I know that you do these things that we observed. It's what creates excellence. But 3 of these were lead with the vision. Highly successful leaders, whatever they do, they set a vision. And they do it over and over and over again. So that was one principle. A second principle that was a high performance principle was they also managed with a plan. So it wasn't just that they had a direction to go, but they had a way to get there. And then third is the principle was that they knew how to prioritize their time. And they did it exceptionally well, which started setting them apart from other people. And so as we taught this, we realized people really didn't have the habits to go with the principles. In other words, how do I do it? And that is what this book, Do What Matters Most, is all about, because what we do is we have a chapter on the why. Why do we lead with the vision? And the habit is to have a personal vision. That's the habit. And so then there's a follow-on chapter with how do I do it? How do I actually develop an inspirational, meaningful, personal vision for me? And so that's one. And then the habit for this next principle, manage with the plan, is setting effective goals, annual goals, because now you have the direction. But what am I going to do this year that creates excellence across all the areas in my life? And last of all, well, how do I prioritize my time? And as you know, because you've read the book, the habit is doing pre-week planning, which I know you do as well. You have that habit. It's those three things that come together that create the excellence. It puts people in a whole nother category and allows them to consistently do what matters most.
So let's start with the first one, right? It's a personal vision that's written down. What percentage of people have a personal vision that's written down?
Okay, so I know that among your listeners are high net worth individuals, business owners, business leaders, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of others that are creating excellence. And as we, especially pre-COVID, we would teach a lot of presidents of companies and seminars, and we would actually ask them to raise their hand if you have a written personal vision that you regularly review. And consistently, 1% to 2% of the hands would go up, which left me kind of speechless, because I've been a member of the Young Presidents Organization for like 39 years. And I'm thinking, man, these guys will have it dialed in, but it's just not typically taught. And so, especially for leaders that influence other people, having a written personal vision that defines clearly your direction in life, but not just filling up a sheet of paper. It's done a little bit differently through a different set of lens, and that is inviting people to think when they write their personal vision about their key roles in life. And what we found is by doing this, it starts creating greater harmony within a person's life, because now they're thinking about, well, what are the things that matter most? Well, it's myself, it's my own fitness, it's my health, it's my spirituality. But it's not just, so you define a personal vision about that. What does it look like? How do I see my life? One of my favorite quotes is, you will either lead your life by design or you will live a life by default. And so creating a personal vision through the lens of your various roles is leading your life by design. What do I want it to look like? How about my relationships? What kind of a husband or significant other will I be? How about a father or a mother? What does that look like? And now for many people, for the very first time, you're giving deliberate thought to these things, and it is the idea. And how about a CEO or a leader? What kind of a leader do I want to be? And as you define this, it deeply starts impacting your thoughts, which lead directly to your habits. Ralph Waldo Emerson shared one of my very favorite quotes ever. He said, sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character, and sow a character and you reap a destiny. But it all starts with the thoughts. And so these three high performance habits, starting with your personal vision, is really creating the thoughts that dominate your mind, that form and shape your habits, your character, and ultimately your destiny. So that's the first one.
It seems to me that we should change high school and college, and instead of writing a thesis on some boring topic, they force you to write your personal vision plan and define each area of your life in order to graduate and say you are educated, so to speak. Because if we created that habit in young people, it would probably change the numbers from 1% to 2% to a much greater number. People just don't know how to do this, and they really struggle with it. And I've shared plenty of resources, and I find even when they've got the resource, they hit a friction point and they don't know what to do. And having somebody there to kind of help you through the friction point makes a dramatic impact. And once it's done, life becomes easier. It just does, because now you have a clear direction of where you're going.
What an observation that is, Rocky. Way to go. You know, I told Rocky before we started today, he and I have a lot in common. I mean, I love his passion in life, but you have hit that so spot on. I mean, if there's a parent that is trying to give their children direction in life, work with their vision. That's where you start. If you can get them inspired about something, then your work is half done. So you're so spot on that. Great insight. Thanks for sharing that. Something that's important for us. We're actually working right now on opening Becoming Your Best charter schools.
Okay.
That's precisely it, is helping young people get their own vision. And then how do they set goals? But it's not done today. You're right.
It's not at all. So the next thing you talk about is manage with a plan with annual goals. So I'm going to challenge you on this, because one of my favorite books is The 12-Week Year. Get more done in 12 weeks than most people do in a year. And what happens with an annual plan is people get excited in January and February, then they forget from March to November. And then if they're in a business, then all of a sudden there's the push to hit the goals in the last 2 months. I find condensing the whole thing down to shorter sprints keeps people more focused. But I'd love to hear what you think and what you've got with regards to annual plans.
Yeah, well, there's probably some value into that. And what you've created is a process to stay focused. And that is what highly successful leaders do, is that they have a plan to do it. Now, in regards to that, so, you know, most people have had experience in setting a New Year's resolution before, right? And so I ask them if they know what January 15th is. Do you know what January 15th is, Rocky?
It's the day that the majority of people stop their goal. We laugh at it because I go to the gym and it's always like, oh, it's January 1st. There's some people here. Well, give it a week or two.
Oh, you got it. You just hit the jackpot, because 85% of people quit working on their New Year's resolutions by January 15th. And so what we suggest, the habit here actually is 4 pretty simple steps of sitting down and creating an annual goal. But you need to do it in a way that it changes your behavior, that it brings out the best within you. So we'll keep in the back of our minds what you just recommended on the 12 weeks. And so here are the 4 steps, if it's helpful for your listeners. The first one is just think about your vision and say, okay, what direction am I going in the various roles of life? And then the second question is the second item is to write down your roles again. This is such a critical process, because once again, it gets you to think in terms of harmony in your life, and one area doesn't take over and drum out all the other areas that might be important as well. And so now that you have in front of you a sheet with your various roles, the third one is, what are the most important things that you can do in each role this year? If it's physical, so I'm going to exercise on average 5 times a week. And you want to be careful of how you describe your goals. You don't want to say, I'm going to do better or I'm going to improve, because they're so general, it's not helpful. Many of your listeners will have used the SMART acronym. So specific, measurable. The more measurable, you can say yes or no. Achievable, relevant to what? Well, to your vision, and time related. Well, when you create SMART goals, it changes your ability to deliver on that goal in your life, to make it a reality. Let's go back to another role. Let's say that somebody is a spouse or a significant other. The goal is not go on dates with my spouse. That's too general. It is go on average 2 dates a month without the children. Now, that is a smart goal, and that will change your behavior. And by the time I'm done with this, I'd like to just point out how it is transformational in life. And so you go through that, and step 4 is maybe one of the biggest ones of all 4, because once you have your goals down on the sheet, now you can sit back and say, wow, I'm never going to have another run at 2021 again. Once it's gone forever. So how can I become my best, not somebody else's best this year? And then you build on it from year to year. And step 4 is, and it deals with this thing that you talked about a few minutes ago, and that is to share your goals that you've created with 2 or 3 or 4 people you really care about, that you would never let down in your life. And that puts accountability in it. And no longer will a person be flaky on their goals if they're doing that, because not only will it create accountability, let's say that if I called you Rocky, and even if I didn't know you, but let's say I do know you and I do now, I could say, Rocky, I'm working on some goals, annual goals. And I'm wondering if you would mind if I could just share them with you. And then I'll report at the end of the year how I did. Would that be okay?
And that works.
Well, yeah. And you, because you're a really cool guy, you would say, well, yeah, I'm willing to put them in a folder somewhere. And if you're going to report at the end of the year, great. You know, you don't have to do much, but it also instantly changes our relationship. It's no longer just somebody that it's no longer a name. You start creating a bond with one another. And then at the end of the year, you report on how it went and then give them your goals for the next year. And that is a game changer. And so I have done this for 40 years now. My mentors, Stephen Covey and David Conger and 3 or 4 others, got my goals every year, and they would respond back. And we did it throughout our whole lives until they died. And I mean to tell you, talk about being close, talk about having commitment to goals. I was very thoughtful about them. So that's the second habit, and then that's how you can make them stick. That's how you can make them meaningful. And I like your 12-week. There's nothing wrong with that because it's so focused. But maybe consider, setting up your own way to account so you follow through. That's the principle.
And that's where a lot of people struggle, is accountability. And I know you said average, and I just want to bring this out because I know it was in the book, and I think it's really important. People say, I want to, and this happened to me when I first started my workout routine, probably like 8-9 years ago. There was an accountability group, and the rules were the group where you had to set your goal and you had to report back every week. Otherwise, you were kicked out of the group. So it was a pretty cool group. The minimum requirement was that you had to work out 3 times a week. These people would come in and they would say, I'm going to work out 6 times a week. Well, you know what happened by Wednesday? They didn't work out Monday, Tuesday. They already failed and they didn't do anything anymore. And so I know you talk about in the book to say, I'm going to work out an average of 5 times a week, which means that if I screw up this week, I'm still going to show up the other 4 times this week. And then next week, I'm going to get to 6 or 5. Like, I'm going to keep going. When you use that word average, it just changes the whole mindset, because most people within 2 or 3 weeks of consistently missing a goal, January 15th, they're done. And I tell people, start small. I always went in. I said, I'm only going to work out 3 times a week. I said, my stretch goal is 5. So I knew I could hit my 3 consistently. And I would argue with I wouldn't argue, but I would go to like the group admins. I'm like, what is up with this? Why do people make these goals that they know they can't hit? Just set a goal for 3, because 3 is better than none, and make it happen.
You're so wise. And thanks for taking a few minutes on that. And thanks for sharing it with your listeners too, because it'll help them. It'll help the goals be more effective, and they'll be more inspired and motivated throughout the year. It's just like, I'm going to read 12 books, and by December 15th. And so if you're reading one on average once a month, you're going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to, but if I say I'm going to read 12 books and I think I can do it all in 2 months, well, that's a bad goal because you set yourself up for failure.
Not me. I can hit that goal.
Yeah, you could hit it. You would hit it. I saw your bookshelf.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So one of the secrets to doing this is to run a good calendar and to have weekly priorities. You've got a system for pre-week planning. Can you share that?
Sure. Well, so this is a process that we've really developed scientifically. And also, how do you realize this goal of effectively prioritizing your time? And what we see happening in the world right now, there's some frightening statistics, let alone COVID, which I think has made this much more difficult even. And so before COVID, 68% of business leaders, and I think this goes across all spectrums, said their number one problem was prioritizing time. And that's a big number. And recently we're working with, we're just brought in by a large multinational organization that you would recognize the name. They did a company 2 months ago, a company-wide survey on what people felt like they needed help with. And the number one issue was time management. So, I mean, people are struggling with how to get everything done. And then here's the corker on this one, Rocky, is 80% of people say they don't have a system that helps them manage their time, a way to manage their time. And so that's what this can do. And it builds right on the first two high performance habits, which is thinking in terms of your roles. And so basically, pre-week planning is sitting down sometime during the weekend, maybe Friday from 4 o'clock on, but definitely before Monday morning at 8 a.m. because Monday morning is when the fires start and it's too late. So you want to go into a week with a solid mindset, being at peace, having low stress levels, being ready to be highly effective to consistently do what matters most. So here's what you do in that 30 minutes that you may spend on the weekend in preparing for the next week. Now, we have a Becoming Your Best Planner that helps with this, but imagine to yourself, and we've just developed an extension for both Google Calendars and Outlook. It does the same thing, but imagine a row going across the top of the page with divided into 7 columns. Each column is a place where you can put in your role. And this is what starts changing things, because after you go in and look at your week and put in your commitments, what we don't want to do, what another really great quote is, you want to schedule your priorities and not prioritize your schedule. And, you know, it's not having a list of to-do things that just drive you from week in and week out. You want to pause and exercise leadership based on your vision and annual goals. That's what you said you wanted to do. These are the things that matter most. So after just putting in your key commitments in your calendar, you can look at it. Then next, put in your roles, which takes 30 seconds. So if you can imagine this setup I just described, 7 little columns, small columns with 5 rows in them. Once you have your roles in them, then you say, by each role, what is the most important thing I can do this week? So if we could all think of a target, an archery's target, and a red bullseye in the middle. And what you're creating in this list of things that you might do under each role, that represents the bullseye. And that would be the things that matter most, rather than just pulling a lot of arrows and they hit where they hit. Now you're very focused. So, if it's personal, mine has exercise 5 times. And that would be the third step in pre-week planning. What will I do? What actions will I take? I lost my wife of 46 years last December. And so she had suffered from, she was an amazing lady. I was so blessed to have her in my life, but she suffered for a number of years with Alzheimer's and dementia and passed away at 66, so pretty young. So not long ago, I decided to start dating again. So under my role of companionship, I have see so-and-so 2 times. That's something that matters most. And so forth for each role. Under my role as president of, I'm a president of 2 different companies, then I have the things that matter most that I will do. And they're big deals, right? So now that you have them down, the last step is when will you do them? And that is when you put them into your calendar. But you're really being thoughtful to exercise leadership. And you're leaving holes. And you said this, Rocky. You're leaving holes within your calendar because you know the unexpected is going to come along. And you want to bring balance to your schedule before you ever start the week. And you look at what you have planned, now what matters most, and you put it in your week, and there it is. And now you can sit back and say, how do I feel about this week? And I'd like to come back to your reoccurring theme, which I applaud and is inspiring, and that is having harmony in your life. And that is what this does. It helps create harmony of consistently doing the things that matter most in each important area. So what I do once I finish that process is I sit back and say, okay, how do I feel about the week? And it is totally aligned, and I'm ready to go. I can ask myself, have I forgotten anything? How do I make it a better week? And it doesn't take long to do this. As I said, it's like 1% of the time of your entire week, and yet it affects 99% of everything else. And people that do this, Rocky, report back to us all the time. I'm talking about weekly. And they talk about how it helps them accomplish more. They're living a more peaceful life. They're able to do the things. Can I just share a quick story that illustrates this? Okay. A few years ago, I was teaching a group in Birmingham, Alabama. It's the 3rd largest Pepsi distributor in the world. They've been in business for 130 years, very successful. And as we were teaching exactly what we just talked about, I noticed one of the executives put down under his role of father, call my son. And I noticed that he had put down on Wednesday at 7 p.m. to call his son. And I said, so I asked him, I said, why is that a big deal? And he replied, well, because I haven't talked with my son in 7 years.
And that's just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And I just kind of gasped. I tried not to act too shocked. And I said, well, I have one recommendation. Just write his phone number down right now by when you put down you're going to call him. And that way, when Wednesday comes, there's no excuse. And I was going to go back 6 months later and work with this team again. And I couldn't wait to go back and see him. And so the very first thing I did when I got back with this group, I made a beeline for him. And I asked him, how did it go? And he responded, he said, you're not going to believe this. He said, I called him, first of all, and he said, we could not remember what the argument was about. And that's why they'd quit talking. They had an argument, and they couldn't even remember it. And so then this fellow replied, he said, we talk every single week now, and it's changed my life. And I am so much happier, so much more at peace. And he said, I am a better executive as a result of doing this. And then he added, and by the way, I found I had 2 grandchildren I didn't know about. And so he and his son talk every single week now, and they're very close. And so I've asked myself since that experience, why didn't this gentleman call his son after 3 years or 5 years? And the conclusion that I came to is because we get so busy in life, we just go from week to week, month to month, going down our list and working as hard as we can. But often we don't pause and just think about the things that are important in life. And the minute he did that and looked at his role as a father, it caused him to pause and say, what action matters more than anything else this week? And he knew the answer, and he put it down. And this is what this does for us, is it creates that kind of an opportunity. And then at the end of the week, you can say, how did I do? And you may not be 100% at hitting the bullseye every time, but it gets you in the right zone. So that's a brief overview of it, and hopefully that's helpful.
That's very helpful. And it brings us up to our next question, which we always like to have an action step for the audience. One simple thing they can do this week to kind of take a step forward. What would you recommend to them?
Okay, well, you all will laugh at this answer. Get a copy of Do What Matters Most. It will change your life. So I love that, and I'm really humble when I said I want to promise you that. But I've been at this for a long time. Rob was a F-16 pilot, my son, who co-wrote the book with me, and Air Force officer. He helped manage Air Force One as well. And so what we've come up with is really something that is transformational. And so I think that's something. And if you do not, you can go, for example, to our website, and we have a free assessment around these principles. It takes like 6 or 7 minutes, and you can go through and create a baseline. You can apply these high performance habits that we've talked together with Rocky today, and then take it again in 3 months and say, how am I doing? So, but if I were to say one thing, pre-week planning is where the rubber meets the road. And if you I know Rocky does this. He mentioned he does weekly planning, and it's that habit that really makes a difference. I think you'll see that.
And that is very, very true. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I would say it is knowing what's important to you and then acting on those things, because it creates a compass from within, and then you start directing your life from within and not based on the weather without. Whether somebody gets cross at you or, cuts in your pathway or raises their voice, when you're crystal clear about it, it helps you act on those things. And I might say among all of those things that I believe are important, and I'm pretty sure you share this, is how you treat other people and treating other people with respect and kindness and living the golden rule. These are things that build close relationships. So aside from all of the success that you have in business and with money and growing things, by the time you get to the end of life, the things that are most precious, besides having some pride that you've been able to do some things, maybe to leave the world a little bit better because of your efforts, are the close relationships that you have with friends and family, because you've worked to bring the best out with them, or the best out of them. And you've treated them so well that they just love you. They just say, wow, this is a person I want to be around. So maybe that's it.
And relationships are a big key to living an abundant life. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I wish that I could have been a better listener earlier in life. That's one of the 12 principles of highly successful leaders is they're effective communicators. And it's both a mindset and a skill set. The mindset, this is all that I think I do better at today. I'm not perfect, but I do much better than when I was younger. And that it is that I have a need to listen to everybody. Because when I listen to people, I learn. And so then really being good at the skill set of listening, of thanking people and saying, let me be sure I have it. And then from there, you're able to get to a better place. But pure listening, if you really understand another person, then you can make a judgment about how you can be of help. And sometimes just being quiet and doing nothing is the greatest help you can be. So I think that would be mine as being a better communicator.
And I tell people, like, if you want to build a great relationship, go sit down and talk with someone for 30 minutes, but make sure that you only talk for 5 of the 30.
You're the best.
And they will be your best friend.
You are the best. I love your counsel and advice.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
It would be to gain a vision of what can be in your life and help them with it so that they can see what the possibilities are. One of our sons, we had 2 sons of our 5 boys that became F-16 pilots. And we've been blessed with really all 6 of our kids are great. We finally had a girl. But the oldest was, when he was a junior in high school, was struggling. His grades were going down. He was lost. And so as a parent, I'm saying, what in the world can I do? And I love what Rocky brought up earlier about a book that you read early in your life that can help you. So I found a number of books that helped me and then gave each of our children $50 for each one of those books that they read and gave me a 1-page book report. And so that's kind of part of this, putting the vision in their brain. But I took our children to a 4th of July major activity in, it's called the Stadium of Fire in the Lavelle Edwards Stadium, football stadium. And there was a flyover of 4 F-16s. And 2 of our boys looked at one another right there in the stadium, and they said, someday we're going to fly those F-16s over this stadium together in the same formation. I mean, talk about audacious and getting a vision. That changed their lives, both of them, because Rob had to straighten up. He had to graduate from high school. He had to graduate from college. And then he went into officers training, got a pilot's slot, became an F-16 pilot. He knew he couldn't slough it, but I didn't have to kind of hover over him to make him do things after that. And then the other son went to the United States Air Force Academy, totally on their own power. And that's what we've tried to do with others. And as a leader, that's what I try to do too. So if we're thinking about an 18-year-old or any age, it's to help them get an inspiring vision that starts bringing out the best within them.
And I tell you, as a parent, it is so much easier when your kid is pulling you than when you are pulling your kid. It is 10 times easier. And so I set it up so my kids are pulling me. It's much, much better. If people would like to learn more about the book, your website, to take that assessment, what's the best way for them to do all of this?
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Rocky. Well, the website is becomingyourbest.com. And the assessment is there, access to any of our materials and services, things that you might like to be aware of are there. And then do what matters most. You can get wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. And it's, of course, available in print and Kindle and Audible.
And I will make sure to put all of that in the show notes to make it easy for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're the best, Rocky. I mean, I want to just once again give you a shout out for what you're doing. I mean, You've done over 250 podcasts already, and your listeners, I want to compliment them, because the fact that they're tuning in means that they want to become their best, that they want to improve, and they're excited about gaining knowledge, and you're providing that opportunity. So I'm honored to be with you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for helping them. It's great guests like you that make that possible.
Well, it's an honor. Thanks.
I enjoyed meeting Steve and reading the book. And there was something in the book that was interesting. He put in a stat that if you have dual monitors on your computer, you increase productivity by 46%. My wife has 3 monitors on her setup. Every other setup in our house, including our kids, have 2 monitors. I work on 2 giant monitors. I even carry a portable monitor when I have to take my laptop and work on the road. It amazes me that more people don't do this. The other thing I do to save time and make life easy is I have charger cords everywhere for my phone. There's so many of them I can't even keep track. It's all about ease and convenience and not getting stuck. So, do you plan your week? Do you have a written vision? Do you make sure you hit your average goals each week? Look, this really isn't hard. You just have to show up and do it. And then you get to have an amazing life. This week's action step was to read the book, Do What Matters Most. If you're not living in harmony, check it out. It's well worth it. Next week, I have on Beth and Greg Langston. We're going to chat about self-discovery for young people. You hear me say this all the time. I wish they would teach this in school. Well, they're working with young people, and they are teaching many of the principles we talked about today, along with so much more. That'll be an exciting episode. Hey, if you enjoyed this, or if you know somebody who needs help with these areas, would you share it with them? And if you do it on social media, tag me. I'd appreciate that. Let's continue the conversation. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.